So we're here to talk about cosms in Torg Eternity. Darrell, which cosm should we start with?
Let's do Pan Pacifica.
Yes.
Because it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it is. Pan Pacifica is one of my favorite of the cosms, and I say this about just about every cosm, but there's a story behind how Pan Pacifica came to be. I was playing in a campaign, a Torg campaign, in Austin, Texas, with my good friend Mark Carroll and Jennifer Bowman, and they came up with this idea for a thing called Pan Pacifica that was out in the Far East. And it really resonated with me. So when Torg Eternity came around and we had our chance to sort of say, here's what, some things we can do, I brought that idea forward, and I think it's really changed into something, it's blended with a lot of the influences that you guys brought to the table, and now it's this really awesome and interesting place to adventure.
Right, especially because it's a combination of a lot of different cultures and nations in the East. We've got a Japanese influence. We've also got heavy Chinese, Korean, Shanghai is there, and there's all sorts of things going on in Hong Kong, of course.
How can you adventure in that area and not have something going on in Hong Kong? And it's got all the great stuff that used to be in that area, like in Torg, which was the really high tech and the sort of sense of intrigue, and it's got, I love the connection to the organized crime and the hard-boiled type of films, but now we're adding in dashes of Resident Evil, and there's some anime in there for the gun-fu action. We're really, I think it's just a really awesome place to go adventure.
So do you want to talk about the pitch for Pan Pacifica and what happens there?
Ooh, well, I mean, the thing about Pan Pacifica is it's like, the pitch is basically it's the cosm where people don't really know that it's an invasion.
Right.
There's a common enemy. There's this outbreak called the Infected that is affecting people and turning them into sort of these zombie-like creatures that are kind of this epidemic sweeping the area.
Right.
And in comes Canoa Corporation saying, "Oh, well, we have the solution to this. Just let us inside and we will help you. We'll create the systems for you. We'll bring you the weapons." And before you know it, Canoa's everywhere.
Right.
So Canoa in the invasion was really just behind the scenes. While they were all looking over here at the Jiangxi, they swept in and became part of everything.
And I like that the notion is that this contagion is the excuse for a corporation like Kanawa to tie all these different cultures together.
Right.
It's like, oh yeah, our situation is so desperate that we actually need an overarching kind of pseudo government that ties these all together.
And they have the technology to deal with it. So and the most important factor is they had this social stranglehold. They had that media blitz where everyone was like, "Oh, I've heard of these guys, and they know what they're talking about."
Right.
Boom, and then they were just in before you knew it.
Yeah, and that's definitely a different setup than original Torg.
Right. Well, I mean, there's some of that. You can already tell there's some of that influence we were talking about, like from Resident Evil, where we thought it would be really cool to have, these particular mutated monsters that you fight and things like that. It's really cool. I love the fact that I can play my hardboiled detective who then rounds the corner and has to deal with flesh-eating zombies, who then teams up with an electric samurai riding a motorcycle through the rain-slick streets of Tokyo.
Right.
How badass is that?
Right.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah, we wanted to keep the intrigue from the old one
and the vengeance
of course. Yeah. So there's world laws in Torg that kind of define what a realm is for people. And the world laws for Pan Pacifica are law of intrigue, which is pretty much in any given group, if you're got more than 10 people, someone's going to be treacherous.
The way I like to think of the law of intrigue is that it is so much more than just the idea that there's a traitor somewhere in the ranks, that it's really the fact that everything on the surface, nothing is quite what it seems.
Right. And that was our big excuse to have this be the kind of the secret invasion. It's like, Kanawa's a little bit advanced, they've got pretty cool tech, but it's not anything too outrageous. It's not so beyond the pale that it's just obvious that they're outsiders.
It's not the cyber papacy, yeah.
Right. It's not obvious that they're outsiders, so they can pretend to be, we're just a core Earth corporation that's stepping up and helping out.
And the distraction of the infected is really the thing that draws all the attention away, plus their mastery of the media. It makes a lot of sense how they were able to do it in Torg Eternity. I think that was one thing we really did well with the Law of Intrigue. And there's other world laws in play. The Law of Vengeance. Which is awesome. And what's the other world law?
It was the law of tenacity, which is we wanted to pull into the the kind of martial art trope of the movies where the hero he's about to go down, but then he's digs deep, wipes the blood off his mouth, and is going to get up and give it that one more try.
The classic gangster films, Hard Boiled and things like those are also where we get a lot of that from.
Exactly.
Hong Kong action cinema.
Exactly. All of that's going to come in together.
Cool. So what about the High Lord of Pan Pacifica?
So, just like in the original, it's Ryuichi Kanawa is the ostensible head of this corporation that's kind of moving in and put its tentacles in everything. But it's a little bit more complicated than that.
Nothing is as it appears.
Exactly.
On the surface.
Nothing is as it appears. So there's another major personality involved, and that's his sister, Reiko Kanawa. And she's kind of this fun, like almost a flighty celebrity in some ways. She's really into poetry and traditional dress, and the media kind of loves her and follows her around.
Right, and that's the media persona. That's what she shows to the world.
Right, and so she gets a lot of attention, drawing some attention away from Ryuichi, who's running the business and getting stuff done. But
there's probably more going on.
There's probably more going on there, which we'll reveal over time.
Yeah. So what kind of monsters do you fight in Pan Pacifica?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about the infected, and they're going to be the core villain that you face.
Right.
And there's different levels of those. Like, Ords, when they kind of catch the disease and get it, they become pretty much like Resident Evil style zombies. They're just going to become thrashing around. They're going to try and eat your face. That's what they do. But they're not that tough. I mean, they're just infected people in a lot of ways. But there's one of the other themes that kind of goes through Pan Pacifica is mutation. And so that contagion, the different individuals that get infected can express it in different ways. Mm-hmm. And especially those with possibility potential. Like if they could have been a Storm Knight, they might mutate even faster and more violently.
And that's where we get some of our real sort of Resident Evil monsters.
Yeah, and some of the tougher guys. And like the Jiangxi are a step up above that.
Right.
So named because their muscles like tighten up like really much, and they move like they've got rigor mortis, so they have to jump instead of walking sometimes. And they're a step up from the regular infected. And then we've got even bigger monsters like the yokai are the next step, the unusuals, the abnormals, as they begin getting more and more dangerous, and over time they could get even more so. We'll see how that mutates in the future.
So what kind of characters do you play when you're in Pan Pacifica?
Right. So we got a lot of culture to play with there.
Oh yeah.
And so one of the vibes that we wanted was we really loved the futuristic Tokyo.
You're talking about the Electric Samurai.
Yeah, exactly.
These are my favorite guys. They get to wear this cool armor called the Ion Gosoku. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
And they get to wield these awesome electrified katanas that do these cool things, and they ride around on motorcycles, and they're kind of like a mix between ninjas and samurai in a way because they can do the stealthy thing. I so want to play one of these guys, really bad.
And a lot of their options come down to how they're customizing their equipment, their special armor. Is it, kind of shadowy armor? Does it light up and brighten people? And they are sort of specifically designed to deal with these infected. So they've got a lot of defenses that are specific to dealing with hordes of people, trying to grab them and pull them down, maybe electrify them, get them off them. And they want to know what's going on. Like, they want to get to the truth.
Right.
Which brings us to kind of one of the other major archetypes from that. We talked about Hong Kong action cinema. Man, hard-boiled cops.
Yeah.
Gotta love hard-boiled cops.
Yep, absolutely. Those guys, and they, because of the nature of Pan Pacifica, they have abilities and things you wouldn't ordinarily see. I mean, Core Earth is a pretty action movie type world, but this is even more so. It takes it just like one step further, right?
Exactly. And they've got, some key powers, martial arts, some perks that pretty much no one else has access to. And that all kind of ties back into that law of vengeance and tenacity, where they're coming from a slightly different place from everybody else.
And one of your allies there are the ghost cartels, like the guys in the Yakuza or the organized crime. And so you could play a gangster or a hitman maybe if you really wanted to.
Sometimes allies, sometimes not. Yeah. Nothing's ever simple in Pan Pacifica.
Right. Nothing is quite what it appears on the surface. So yeah. So that's a pretty solid overlook at Pan Pacifica. What else would you like to talk about with this Cosm?
So we wanted to talk a little bit about the changes that we made from the original. Originally, the invasion was much more obvious.
It was supposed to be secret, but it was kind of like if you read it. So it was this was a product of its time, right? It was from the 80s, and we all kind of thought that Japan was going to be
taking over,
dominant economically in a way that just didn't turn out in the real world. So it really, if you go back and look at what it was called, which was called Nippon Tech, I think it just doesn't really work in the modern era anymore as the way it was. So we had to make some tweaks and some changes to it. That being said, I think a lot of what the core themes of Nippon Tech are still present in Pan Pacifica. We just chose to put a slightly different spin on it.
Right, and that's true of Torg Eternity overall. We wanted to take the core of the original, like the stuff that people held on to, and update it, make it a little bit more modern and a lot more fun to play, hopefully.
And we're not ruling out clones, just saying.
We'll talk about clones some other time.
There's much going on in the future for Pan Pacifica.